Hey guys, how are you? Great that you're here. What are the visual elements of art? Quite important question, because it's through these visual elements that we perceive the form of art. Just like we have five senses, right? We can see, we can hear, we can taste, we can touch. We perceive the outside world via these senses. Art has some visual elements, and it is through these visual elements that we can perceive the form of art. Let's talk about this a little bit more. Everything starts with lines. Think about it. When you sit down to write a letter, you touch the pencil and then you start writing. Whether it's straight, squiggly, it's always a line. Lines are the symbols of sounds. Think about it. Via the reading of lines, we can perceive sound. So it goes back and forth from sound to line, from line to sound. That's how it works. Let's say artist Keith Haring. He used to use very bold lines. So this one work of his titled Untitled from 1982 shows a merman floating above the sea with a dolphin appreciating it. What does that mean? That merman was kind of a deity because it was floating, it had wings, and the lines were showing that it was shining. This meaning is totally symbolic. And we understand because whenever we showed something shining, we created lines around it. On the subject of lines, you get contour line, outline. All of those things are slightly different in meaning. An outline is something that defines a two-dimensional shape. For instance, you have a blackboard and then you have a piece of chalk. So you take the chalk and you start drawing a house, you draw a bush, a tree. All of those things that you draw immediately, they will be outlines. They're defining two-dimensional shapes. Now, when it comes to contour lines, those are the lines that we draw as we perceive three-dimensional object. For instance, if you draw a cow, or if you draw that same house or the same tree, then you start making rounder contours. You will perceive that things are three-dimensional. So even though the lines are similar in how they're made, their purpose is very different. Directional lines are very interesting because what they do is this. We look at a picture, a photograph, a drawing, a painting, and all of a sudden we realize that things are going in a certain direction. So our brains translate that as directional lines, as movement. That is because of our perception of gravity. If things are falling a certain way, that is because of how gravity is weighing down on these objects. So we end up understanding the weight of gravity. We always tend to translate as lines whatever we see in a composition. Two other big visual elements are shape and mass. A shape is very easy to define. It occupies a certain space with identifiable boundaries. We always talk about a mass of clay, the mass of a mountain, the mass of a building. These are the things that fill up the shape. So whatever is within that shape that will give it volume, that's the mass. Got it? When it comes to shapes and masses, it's very important to pay attention to the fact that there are geometric shapes and organic shapes. Geometric shapes, you know, these are the shapes of geometry. A square, a triangle, a circle. The other shapes are shapes that are formed by nature. That's why they're called organic shapes. The shape of a tree, the shape of a bush, the shape of the waves. There are implied shapes. Can you believe that? For instance, if you look at Raphael's work, the Madonna in the Metals, as the Madonna is there, and one child is here, and the other one is here, and they're playing, and the way she's sitting with her legs like this, they together end up creating the shape of a triangle, because that is the most well-balanced shape. We're going to talk about one of the main visual elements. It's colors. Color is one of the favorite visual elements of most people because colors are related to emotion, space, environment. Let's just say that the study of color has really been enriched by Isaac Newton. We know that Newton observed that ray of light would come down and be broken or refracted into different colors. Those are all the colors of the rainbow. We will eventually talk about primary color, secondary color, intermediate colors, tertiary colors, warm colors, cool colors. But let's do this in a different video. I do believe we should talk about the emotional effects of color. In the US, the colors green and red are very much associated with winter festivities, let's say Christmas. However, for Van Gogh, green and red meant something totally different. Once he painted a cafe interior that juxtaposed reds and greens, and what he was trying to show through his cultural understanding of the colors red and green, the terrible passions of humanity. Kind of different from Christmas, isn't it? Another element is texture and pattern. And those two we want to break down into actual texture, such as the sculpture by Mona Hatoum titled Dormiente. She takes a regular bench and adds these sharp edges. You feel that you could sit on it because it's a bench, but then if you do sit on it, you're going to get hurt. Her point was to make the familiar objects unfamiliar. Besides the actual texture, there's visual texture. And that is what you see in paintings and photographs. Even though the surface is smooth, it's a visual trick created by the artist. Take a look at this artwork by William Koff, titled Still Life with Glass Goblet and Porcelain Bowl. I know it's a long title. But when you look at it, you will see that every single one of these objects, you feel their texture so much. But the painting itself is a flat, very smooth surface. Another big visual element is space. Think about this. When we talk about space in our current culture, we think of space as nothingness, emptiness, nothing around. But that's not really what it means. How could there be a shape without space around it to set its borders? So far, these are the main visual elements, but there are two more that in the past few decades have been added to the list of the main visual elements. They are time and motion. Time is life and motion is living. Richard Serra said that his work is about understanding the relationship between space and movement. When you see his work, not only you have something to look at, but you also have something to walk around and to get inside of. So it's really about time and motion. Time because you're spending your moments as a living creature looking at a massive work of art. Motion because you have to walk around it. It requires you to move your body to experience this artwork. So yes, these are the main visual elements. And I want you to ask yourself, what are the visual elements that I am working with? Whether you are an artist or someone who appreciates art, let me know. I'll see you next time.